Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the end of the Dutch part of the commemoration on the murder of Theo van Gogh in front of the monument screen. And what we have just done is we have called this monument Speaker's Corner of the Netherlands. And it turns out that there already is a sort of Speaker's Corner in this park, Amsterdam Park East. But this will include a request to the municipality of Amsterdam to place that existing Speaker's Corner to this very place, because this is the place where the Speaker's Corner should be, in honor of a champion of the free speech, right, who was murdered here and had his throat cut. Now that's one thing. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to present the English version. You see here a poster of a Dutch book which appeared in 2012 on the real background to the murder of Theo van Gogh. And in a few words, it is this. The murder was committed and financed by the Islamic community in Amsterdam because of their anger about the insult that Theo van Gogh made on a television program in which he called his pig the name of the god of the Muslims. In their belief, this deserves the death sentence. But it was covered, it was shadowed by the Dutch political establishment because they wanted to get rid of this village idiot. And I've been reading chapters out of this book ever since it appeared in 2012 to make an appeal to the Dutch government and the Dutch population to make them understand what really happened. Now it's beginning to rain again, and I'm going to read from the book. The title of my speech is "Can the Islamization of Europe be halted?" And this is a question that a Serbian novelist named Dusan Tezic Luzanski wrote in the foreword to this book under the title "Can the Third Wave of Islamization in Europe Still be Halted?" And he says in this foreword, "I have already written in my books that the third millennium is characterized by the unstoppable advance of the Islamization of Europe." Is that correct? You live here. It's addressed to the speaker, to the writer, Slobodan Mitric, and are more aware of the dramatic times that Europe is now experiencing. This is the third Islamization of Europe within the last 1500 years. Only this time it cannot be stopped and is permanent. Now this man is a member of the Order of the Maltese Cross. He's a member of one of the many orders of knights that were set up in Europe in the medieval times to protect Christianity. But where are these medieval orders of knights to protect Christianity now? We don't see them anymore, so we need a new knightly order of Knights of the Word to protect and advance Christianity as a buffer, as the most proper way to deal with this Islamization. And that is why I have submitted a petition to our king, William Alexander, who is the Grand Master of the military Willehalm Order of Knights, to initiate a supplement, a civil Order of Knights of the Word, named after the founder of the House of Orange in the 9th century, a paladin of Charlemagne, who was a patron saint of Celtic Christianity and who was also a patron saint of the Christian Knights. And this this petition was submitted to the king in 2014 and has been enlarged to also include the reformation of the world economy. So in terms of meeting the Islamization of Europe, there are two fundamental areas. In the religious sense, you can only meet the Islamization of Europe on religious grounds. And that would be the new Christianity that Rudolf Steiner in 1924 propounded. The new Christianity that is a Christianity of faith and knowledge. But on the political side of Islamization, they have an ideal of a theocracy, which is fundamentally opposed to our constitutional state. And so these two areas of stopping the advance of Islamization are the new Christianity, and on the other hand, on the political sphere, the so-called idea of the threefold social order, or social organics. Now these ideas are completely new for most of you, but are almost 100 years old. The new Christianity has been propounded after Rudolf Steiner by Valentin Thomberg in his lectures on the Old Testament and the New Testament and the Apocalypse here, partly in the Netherlands. And the idea of a social organics, that means the strengthening of the constitutional state, in which the idea of the rights sphere of the state should be limited to the question of rights, and the state should withdraw from the section of culture and from the section of economy, and these three subsystems should be independent of each other. Now we have actually a sort of one centralized state, and in which there is no really separation between the politics and the economic figures, which corrupts the rights sphere. So we can be supporting the sphere of rights, but it's being corrupted by this diffusion between politics and economy. In the medieval times, it was a question of separating church and state. Now we have to add on to that separation of the state and the economy. So those are not answers to the question that this Dusan Lozensky posed, but they're indication in which direction we should look to find an answer. Now, you can find that in the last two appendices in this book, called, just let me see, the chapter, Can the Rise of Islamization Still Be Halted?, based on a book called How the Grail Sites Were Found, in which it is elaborated how this founder of the House of Orange was captured in Spain by the Moors and converted his captors, an Arabian princess Arabelle, to his form of Christianity. And that is a lightning example how you can show that this new Christianity is a continuation of the Islam. Because in the Far East, there is a tradition of the three kings, right, who came to the birth of Jesus. They knew about Christianity. And that sort of Christianity is included in this new idea of new Christianity. That can be a sort of a bridge between Islam and Christianity. And the other bridge between the political aspects of the Islam, their idea of a theocracy in which we are ruled by imams and muftis, is not only a step backward to the medieval times, but even going further back to the Egyptian times, when the pharaoh was the great big godly ruler, and his subversive subjects. We don't want to go back to that. So there is a real danger of the Islamization of Europe, as I say, as this man Luzansky has has taken note of, and that it really is also apparent in Amsterdam. I have been speaking here the last 4 years, and I want to give at the end of this speech, I want to summarize some of the things that I've said here from page 81. The third speech in 2014 was entitled "Why Theo van Gogh Was Really Sacrificed." In the run-up to the third and so far last discourse, during the commemoration on November 2nd, there finally seemed to be a change in that deafening silence about the real circumstances concerning the murder of Theo van Gogh, through a number of notable developments that in the end turned out to be nothing but missed opportunities. First, there were the revelation by Fritz von Stahlen, the chief public prosecutor, during the trial of the murder of Van Gogh, made in a radio program, Dossier 1 Today, on September 22nd, 2014. I quote from the announcement of the website Radio 1. "Today, I, Stalin, am convinced that Mohammed Bouyeri, the murderer of Theo van Gogh, did not act alone." This public prosecutor says he's convinced that Mohammed Bouyeri did not act alone. The criminal investigation into the murder of Theo van Gogh has yielded, according to this public prosecutor, frustratingly little. For example, there are clues, he said, that there are people who explored the route of Theo van Gogh and who provided the firearm. That's a chapter in this book, how that transpired. Who gave the murderer the firearm with which he murdered Theo van Gogh. And also a chapter in which is a public tribute to Mohammed Bouyeri on the Javastraat, not far from here, in which the Prince of Death, donned in an Arabic gown, was given piles of money on a rose-strewn street in a company of an imam and 2 bodyguards. Now, the relevant dossier Radio 1 Today also quotes Lutken B., former police commissioner of Rotterdam and former researcher of CTIVD, commissioned for the supervision of the intelligence and security services. This former police chief says that the Dutch Secret Service, the AIVD, has failed to share information with the regional police forces and intelligence services that the so-called Hofstaat group, Hofstaat referred to The Hague, of which Mohammed Bouyeri was an active member, was up to something, and speaks of a missed opportunity. About the fact that already on November 10th, just 8 days after the murder, Minister Piet Hein Donner from the Justice Department and Remkes, Minister of the Interior, wrote in a letter to the Parliament that the AIVD did a good job. Lutken says, I quote, "I really thought what a lot of nerve, so soon after something like this, to write completely, no mistakes, nothing to blame, that you cannot actually do. The investigation was too short and you only relied on information from the Secret Service itself. I thought that was not so fortunate, clumsy and risky." So you have a police commissioner criticizing the government for putting through a completely inadequate investigation, and then praised by people from the government. The announcement on Radio 1 Today ended as follows: "The Socialist Party advocates reopening the investigation in view of the fact that the prosecution is convinced that Mohammed Bouyeri was not acting alone. Ronald van Raak, who's a member of the SP, wants to see that any eventual accomplices still be brought to justice." So where is Mr. van Raak? He didn't answer to this book. Now, these and other startling pronouncements about deleted images, miscommunication and corruption within the apparently competing services within the government are consistent with the descriptions given in Dead End Street, this book. And because Minister Plasker, responsible for the AIVD, the Secret Service, following the revelations of Radio 1 Today on October 9th, 2014, has ordered the CTIVD to conduct a reinvestigation into the murder of Theo van Gogh and the actions of the Dutch Secret Service. So I wrote on October 31st, 2014, the following letter to the Supervisory Committee on the Intelligence and Security Services. On October 23rd this year, I mailed to you an announcement of my speech on the coming 2 November during the commemoration of the murder of Theo van Gogh, why Theo van Gogh was really murdered, based on the above literary crime report of Dr. Slobodan R of Mitric, a 10th Dan karate master and possessor of an honorary doctorate in law. It contained the following sentence: given the accumulation of strong suspicions or evidence that much more was going on than hitherto the government has scantily admitted, the Supervisory Committee on the Intelligence and Security Service can no longer fail to include the findings of the reality novel Dead End Street in its re-investigation of this murder, recently announced by Minister Plasker, who is still in office, and as such invite the ailing former top counterintelligence agent Karate Bob, while he is still alive, because he's desperately ill. He has a small studio not far from here. His legs are bleeding. He doesn't get any medical service. It's an absolute scandal that this is allowed in this country. While he is still alive, to testify on which striking observations and secretly recorded and filmed events he has based his startling revelations. So he made an offer to, I'm at 5 more minutes. I hereby urge you in the investigation of the true background of the murder of Theo van Gogh to have the findings of this book examined, because I understand that the author is prepared to testify in this case. I request you to do so. If this happens, then the most obvious thing is to question him about his observations on which chapter 13, Public Tribute to the Prince of Death, is based. In this chapter, it is namely described how the chosen one, a young Moroccan, dressed in regal Arab robe, surrounded by hefty bodyguards, was honored on the flower-strewn left sidewalk of the Java Street, not far from here, from Java Square to the tunnel, the railway tunnel, by deeply bowing retailers, kneeling before him and pressing rolls of European banknotes in his hand. A scene in which the police and even well-known politicians were present, and which was apparently filmed, ascertaining that this public homage to the Prince of Death took place, whose name in this book is not mentioned, but who is none other than Mohammed Bouyeri, is enough to confirm the truth of the statement of the public prosecutor, Fritz von Stahlen. I'm convinced that Mohammed Bouyeri did not act alone. But also the other chapters from Dead End Street that are based on secretly filmed or recorded incidents show that there was much more going on that has been made known by the government. Because these chapters show that Theo van Gogh was offered in the national interest, on the one hand, to nip an impending rebellion by radical elements within the Islamic community in the bud, and on the other hand, because he had categorically refused to give in to the repeated urgent demands of the Secret Service to remove from his website the Gezonde Roker, the Healthy Smoker, a lengthy article, shadow commending of the Prince, in which next to Dutch Prince Bernhard, the writer as Karate Bob plays a central role, and concerning which the then Prime Minister Balkenende and the then Queen Beatrix harbored serious reservations. Do you have anything more? How much more is left?
Battery is nearly empty.
Okay, now there's some other missed opportunities. I'll shortcut The Game of the Wolf, a beautiful film which was meant to hide the truth. Friends of Theo van Gogh were involved in that. Theo Holman, for example. They all knew, as well as Prime Minister Balkenende, knew that he would be killed. Okay, now I've read, what I read here in Dutch was the murder of Theo van Gogh was an action financed by the Islamic community. I have to cut that. There was no response from Geert Wilders, who's supposed to champion the anti-Islamization wave in the Netherlands. Also the novel The 2nd of November by Thomas Ross, a Dutch novelist, completely disregarded it in his book The 2nd of November. And I read you now at the end the summary and conclusion. It is abundantly clear that from the above accumulation of facts and the serious indications that can be found in Dead End Street, as well as from the detailed additions to it by the author, and from the various attempts made here to expose them at the monument, the Scream, dedicated to the freedom of speech, the Dutch government, in its cover-up culture, in collusion with the mainstream press and media, is not in the least interested in discovering the true background to the murder of Theo van Gogh. They are therefore directly or indirectly guilty of obstruction of justice. This is further confirmed by ignoring the offer by the writer and criminologist Slobodan Mitric to appear with his relevant knowledge and expertise before the Supervisory Commission, the CTIVT, into the murder of Theo van Gogh, and furthermore by the actions of the Dutch Secret Service, the AIVD, the mainstream media, and the political cultural establishment. Lastly, and to finish, may the English version of this true crime do what the original Dutch version failed to do, namely to help get to the bottom of this case so that at least the course of justice will not turn into a dead-end street. Okay.
Okay.